I want it to be a place where people can come and sense my presence. I want it to be a place where your family gathers and you can share the love I created you to share. Because this is what we do in my house. Something new is happening. And he tells Moses to go ahead and cut 2 new tablets, because he broke the other ones, we know that. Come up to the mountain alone, and he would write on them the way he did the first time, with the finger of God, which is attached to his hand. And we get to verses 5 through 9.
And the Lord descended in the cloud, and stood with him there, and proclaimed the name of the Lord. And the Lord passed by him, and proclaimed, the Lord God, merciful and gracious, long-suffering and abundant in goodness and truth, keeping mercy for thousands, forgiving iniquity and transgression and sin, and that will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children, and upon the children's children, unto the 3rd and 4th generation. And Moses made haste, and bowed his head toward the earth, and worshipped. And he said, If now I have found grace in thy sight, O Lord, let my Lord, I pray thee, go among us, for it is a stiff-necked people, and pardon our iniquity and our sin, and take us for thine inheritance.
Comes around to grace again. Moses worships, and then he asks for something that this is the first time that it's put in this context. When he says, what's the last thing you read? Take us for your inheritance. It's the same word that's used every time God tells them to go in and possess the land. Possess the land, which is a nice way of saying, possess me. Not just, possess me like a possession. Every area of my mind, my body, my soul, my spirit, Lord, possess me. The children will be inheriting the land. Moses says, that's fine. I want you to possess me. You're giving us a land to possess, you possess us. Moses sees that not just as the only way forward. Quite frankly, do we all realize that we would never make a mistake if God was actually possessing us? Ever? That every single thing that we struggle with, we wouldn't? It becomes an outrageous kind of request. Empty me out and you possess me, from the bottom of my feet to the top of my head. Moses knows that that is the way forward, but he knows more than that. We committed adultery, and you love us so much. I'm saying to you, honey, I am yours, all of me. Take me. I mean, there's something going on here that is quite outrageous, actually. God renews the covenant that he had stated earlier, tells them that he's going to do awesome things and he's going to drive out the enemies, and goes through the whole thing. And at the very end, at verse 28,
so he was there with the Lord 40 days and 40 nights. He did not eat bread or drink water, and he wrote on the tablets the words of the covenant, the 10 Commandments.
We've got the covenant restated, we've got the law restated, and God reminds him in the middle of this whole passage, he reminds him once again that we talked about a few minutes ago, that he's a jealous God. Like he said before, this is about my love. This is not about being a rigid taskmaster and making you do things because I'm God and you're not. He's a good dad. He takes care of his children. He's a good husband. He shows his wife grace when she commits adultery. But I said something new is going on in this progressive and present revelation of his glory. The covenant that he renews in the Decalogue, that's not new. That's just, it's renewed and it's repeated. And you can go back and study it yourself. It is kind of interesting in Exodus 19 when God first refers to the covenant. It's before the law, and Moses shares everything with the people. And we get to Exodus 24. It's like a wedding vow. The people say, I do. We will do it. We will obey. I do. This is what God's, it's kind of like the groom is standing there at the altar and saying, this is what the covenant looks like. But they said, I do. God renews it. There's a lot of new things going on. This hiding in the cleft of the rock, instead of meeting with God face to face, God says, I'm going to put my hand over that. I'm going to hide you and pass by. That's a new thing. That hasn't been done before. That's new. Moses cutting out the stone and God writing with his finger. That's new. The first time around, God cut out the tablets of rock and he wrote on them both. He did the whole thing. Now he participates with Moses. That's new. We also have the Lord, I don't know if you caught it in verse 5 when it says the Lord descended in the cloud and stood there. That's new. There's been all kinds of words being used, but that's new. The Lord descended in the cloud. This is not a voice coming from a cloud. This is not, the Lord descended on the cloud. It's the same kind of language that's used, that Paul uses when he talks about eventually the second coming. The Lord's going to descend on a cloud. He's using a different kind of language, whether the form, whatever. But the newest thing that I'm looking at when I say a new thing is this idea of possess me. That really, really gets a hold of me. To say to God, you know, when you say, fill me with your spirit, it sounds like there's a me, there's a spirit. I want to be filled with the spirit, but there's going to be some of me left. I mean, it gives that kind of connotation. That's not the same as possessing. In other words, this glass can be filled with water, but the glass is never going to turn to water. It's just going to be filled with it. It's still going to be a glass. But what Moses is talking about is pour water into this glass and all that's left is water. That's what he's referring to. Let's read verses 29 to the end and see what all this means.
And it came to pass when Moses came down from Mount Sinai with the 2 tablets of testimony in Moses' hand, when he came down from the mount, that Moses wist not that the skin of his face shone while he talked with him. And when Aaron and all the children of Israel saw Moses, behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come nigh him. And Moses called unto him, and Aaron and all the rulers of the congregation returned unto him. And Moses talked with them, and afterward all the children of Israel came nigh, and he gave them in commandment all that the Lord had spoken with him in Mount Sinai. Until Moses had done speaking with them, he put a veil on his face. But when Moses went in before the Lord to speak with him, he took the veil off until he came out. And he came out and spake unto the children of Israel, that which he was commanded. And the children of Israel saw the face of Moses, that the skin of Moses' face shone. And Moses put the veil upon his face till he went in to speak with him.
Moses comes away from the Lord. His face is radiating. Quite an astonishing sight. I like the way it's worded actually in the Hebrew, because some would say, well, if you put oil on your face, you know, and the light hits it, it shines. No. This is not a reflection. The actual Hebrew word is talking about light coming from the inside out, shining through his skin, which is why the people are afraid. They wouldn't really be all that afraid if it was a reflection. I mean, they would say, oh, he looks a bit shiny today. Must have been rubbing some olive oil on his face, or maybe he's Italian, you know, they shine anyway, you know, comes through whether we like it or not. They see something that is so bizarre, they're afraid. And Moses doesn't know that he's radiating. Just like when the manna appears, you know, what is it? Nobody knows. Something new is happening here. This has never happened before. We've never had a human being look at another one and shine the way Moses is shining. And once he realizes what's going on, it says he puts a veil on. But when he goes in to talk to God, he takes the veil off. Why? Because wives don't wear veils in front of their husbands. So when I talk to my husband, I don't keep the veil on. But he puts the veil on when he comes back out between him and the people. Because once again, just like at Mount Sinai, remember at Mount Sinai? They were afraid. They saw the lightning, the whole thing, and they're afraid. And they back away. Moses says, here, come closer. The same thing as at the mountain. What's happened is the glory from the mountain that fell on the mountain is now in him. And the Hebrew word that I was referring to, it's Q-A-R-A-N, Quran basically. And what it means, it's a really weird word when you try to put it in the context of Moses' face. Because it's talking about light darting forth like horns. Like the horns come out of an animal. So in other words, what they're describing, and we've seen this. I mean, if you look up at the sky when there's lightning, not the thunder, but the lightning, it looks like the lightning is shooting out of the sky towards earth. I mean, it's scary, isn't it? That's what's happening with Moses. It's like the lightning of the glory, if you would, is shooting out of his face. And they're looking at it, and what do? Oh, let me get closer to that. No, we don't. We do the opposite. We back away. So he's like, no. He didn't know that was going on. He didn't know that the glory of the mountain is now in him, That being in the presence of God, he's not just like getting kind of a reflection, if you would. That's not what's happening. He is being saturated as he asked. Show me your glory. Possess me. Fill me with your glory. And as he comes out, that glory is shooting out of him, his face. It's beyond cosmic. This is an unprecedented new thing that's happening. Veils were not unusual. Women wore veils with someone they didn't know. Women wore veils. We haven't gone through all of Exodus, but I know you know this, that part of the description of how to build the temple was with a veil between the holy place and the most holy place. There was a veil separating. We could talk a lot about the veil. We could see the veil as representing the new glory. Now I said the new glory, looking at the Old Testament and the glory that was revealed in the Old Testament to the glory that was coming in the face of Jesus Christ, what we see, the veil representing that a new glory is coming, that the bride is wearing, a glory that's being prepared by God from being in his presence for his son. It's a veiled glory at the time of Moses, but a wedding is coming. So you could see this in a lot of different ways. They just kind of start to blow your mind. But here's how Paul sees it. In 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verses 7 right through the rest of the chapter, 7 until the end.
But if the ministry of death, in letters engraved on stones, came with glory, so that the sons of Israel could not look intently at the face of Moses, because of the glory of his face, fading as it was, how will the ministry of the Spirit fail to be even more with glory?
Do you understand what he just said? He's referring back to, they did get stone tablets, and there was a glory that was revealed, but it was a fading glory. In other words, Moses, when he was out in front of the people, his face would diminish. He'd get back in the presence of God and be filled again with this glory. And he's saying at that time, there was glory associated on the mountain, the giving of the law. Moses comes out. There's glory associated with that, but it's a diminishing, it's a fading glory.